Okay, friends, I am here with my wonderful friend Anne Molesky, and we are here to talk about some assessment practices for elementary general music. And the idea here is that these are practices and procedures and activities that you can just drag and drop into your classroom tomorrow. Anne and I are both music teachers, and we know the struggle that it can be to sift through like a textbook activity or something designed for, maybe a teacher education course or something like that, when what we really need is just something to plug and play tomorrow. So assessment is one of those activities that can get very like textbook intellectual, and it doesn't need to be. So that's what we're talking about here today. And do you have anything to add?
Nope. Rock and roll. You can go first. I think that just the idea, like you said, it doesn't need to be something super stressful with assessment. A lot of assessment in our classroom is just going to be observational data. And I think that's what we're both talking about today. So
Yep. Great. Okay, so let's talk about a temperature check. This is something that we can do if, let's say, we are going to walk into perhaps a new situation or a situation where we just want to be a little bit more purposeful here on out. Like if we want a fresh start, a clean slate, and we want to get a sense of where students are. One of my favorite places to do that is just in the warm-up. And what I like to do here is actually jump into improvisation right away. So we are going to be assessing singing voice and pitch matching, but we will do it in kind of a divergent way where the students get to choose what they're going to be doing. So let's imagine and you are in my first grade class, and we're singing some stuff back and forth as a part of the warm-up routine. So we've been outside the classroom. Now we walk inside, and we're all standing in a circle. And I might sing, "Hello, first grade.
hello, Miss Victoria.
How are you today?
I'm feeling fine.
What did you have for breakfast this morning?"
I didn't have time to eat.
Great. And you're going to have all sorts of things that pop up. And your response was like very succinct, and you also ended on do, right? And jokes aside, like if we hear someone do that, we would be like, oh, that's interesting, right? Like that would tell me a lot about how you're internalizing a harmonic cadence in this question and answer thing. Most likely what we're going to have is, I had gummy worms and root beer because last night was Halloween and my mom said I could have it, but just this one time for breakfast. And notice that this activity is not metered. So if a student wants to go on and on and on, eventually I want them to be aware of what the rest of the ensemble is doing, but it's not like, it does not have to fit into like a 4/4 time or use any specific set of rhythmic ideas. Okay, so now let's go through that. One last thing with this. So everyone is going to sing what they had for breakfast. We're doing it all together as a class. And then with my roster, I might say, "Anne, what did you have for breakfast this morning?" And Anne would sing back,
I had scrambled eggs and cottage cheese, but I don't really like cottage cheese, but my mom put it in there anyway because she says I need to eat more protein in my diet.
"Thank you for sharing. Go on to the next person," right? And that's how you can kind of like gently cut it off, because at a certain point, like sometimes they're just doing it to be goofy, and everyone can be laughing as we move on to the next person, right? So as Anne is singing that, I have my rubric out and I am listening for Anne using her singing voice. So Anne gets to decide what she's singing. I am listening for if she can translate her breakfast into a vocal response. So that's the easiest like drag and drop thing. The other thing that I like about this model is that we can use it with rhythm. What did you have for breakfast this morning? Right? And someone just improvises something rhythmically as the response there. The other thing that I like is that it works for young students and it works for older students. So let's imagine that we're going to do that same warm-up routine and we walk in singing, "Come through in a hurry, come through in a hurry, come through in a hurry, Alabama gal." And then I might sing, "Good morning, fourth grade.
Good morning, Miss Victoria.
How are you today?"
I am feeling fine.
And you can give me your answer with whatever singing voice you want. It will be your real singing voice, not a silly singing voice, but it can be any melody that you imagine in your head. What did you have for breakfast this morning?
I ate French toast this morning. It was yummy. It was yummy. It was yummy. I don't know.
Great. Yeah, so you see, like, just with that, and when I put you on the spot, like, it's much harder if I open it up and say you can come up with anything you want, even though I'm not telling you that you have to use low law, right? I could hear in your response that you were incorporating it on your own. So same thing there. I'm not assessing whether or not Anne used low law. I'm assessing, same thing, Anne's vocal response. Is she able to translate her breakfast into a vocal response with this activity?
Yeah. I love this because of how you showed that it can be tailored for not just older or younger students more broadly, but specifically what concept you're working on. Like you might be doing it rhythmically with syncopy because you're going to be doing something with syncopy. Doesn't matter whether or not they know, quote unquote, know the rhythm, know how to read and write it and identify it. It's something that you can do in any part of the process. You can make this just a part of what you do every day, right? Kids come in, they sing something, and then you take a minute to take a couple responses. So you can constantly be taking that temperature check, not just like for singing voice, but based on whatever specific concepts you're working on. So that's really cool. Yeah, that's a great idea. I love it.
And with that idea of a rubric, what is going to happen with some students, and this is inevitable, you're not doing anything wrong when someone says, I didn't have breakfast. That's a totally valid response, right? And Anne had that. And your response is, tell me in your singing voice, right? So we have, it's not just like any vocal output is correct. We have a set of criteria that we are listening for. Same thing if someone goes, I didn't have breakfast today, then our response is the same. Like, tell me in your singing voice, that kind of thing.
Or if it's, I didn't have breakfast today, right?
Yes, exactly. And then we go,
sing.
woo, 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 and we try it again. Yes.
Yeah.
Great.
Sure. Cool. Love it. My turn?
Your turn.
So going off of that, maybe my my warm-up that day would be like, what did you have for breakfast? Right?
Yeah.
That type of thing, because my focus is going to be on so-mi-do. So I have two quick ideas. If you are either in the pre-literacy phase for so-mi-do, before your students know what do is, where it lives, how it relates to me, and all that good stuff, or if you're post-literacy with it. So they've learned it, you've told them where it lives on the staff, all that good stuff, and they're starting to use that vocabulary, that formal language with that note. So the first is pre-literacy. One of my favorite songs to use for so-mi-do is Mouse, mousey, little mousey, hurry, hurry, do, for the kitty in the housey will be chasing you. Do you sing it different than I do? You must. Yeah. Okay. Of course, it always happens.
Just like one little turn. Yep. Keep going.
Yeah. The hurry, hurry, do, hurry, hurry, do is the other way to do it. Yeah. So mouse, mousey is the so-mi-do. And so if we isolate that, mouse, mousey. Maybe we have our students play the chase game. So at the end of the game, if you're not familiar, at the end of the song rather, you say go, and there's one student who's walking around the circle. You can play it 8 million different ways, but this is just the most straightforward. There's one student walking around doing the duck, duck, goose style thing. Hurry, hurry, do, for the kitty in the house he will be chasing you. Go. Tap on the shoulder or whatever it might be, and then play the chase game. And what I love to do with any chase game like this is find the element to extract and do some sort of, skill building in between the turns, like as a transition. Mm-hmm. So maybe for this game, before we play the game, if it's not the first time you play the game, before we play it a new day, we take mouse, mousey, and we show mouse, mousey with magnets on the board. And we think, we have high, middle, low. Can we all show that on our bodies? High, middle, low. Do is on your knees on my body ladder. Okay. And then we think, how could we rearrange these magnets to be a different way of singing mouse, mousey with high, middle, low? And maybe we'll come up with the opposite. Mouse, mousey. Show me on your body ladder. Mouse, mousey. So knees, waist, shoulders. Okay. Let's even switch it up further. Mouse, mousey. And this is just if you want to have it totally teacher-led. You could definitely take suggestions from students too. They wouldn't even necessarily have to sing it. They could just come move the magnets in free space. And then that would be mouse, mousey, waist, shoulders, knees. And those are our 3 options. So when you are done playing the game, when you tag someone and it's going to be your turn to be that mousey before you choose a kitty who will be chasing you, I want you to pick one of these 3 and just sing and show on your body ladder. And so then you can get an idea of where students are in terms of their understanding between that high, middle, low. And what's neat about that is the first pattern, mouse, mousey, is from the song, right? So that's really accessible for students who might feel nervous about it. Mouse, mousey is kind of like the next level because it's the reverse. And then the mouse, mousey might be like for that kid who feels really, really confident, right? And then maybe if you want to keep going with that, maybe the next time it's just kind of choose your own adventure and you leave it open, right? So same thing that you did. You start kind of with that clear teacher-led delineated thing, and then you can move on to, but you could also do something else, right? Yeah. You can also do something different. Yeah.
So the beauty of what you're giving us is you are embedding it inside a game. Right? And so the assessment is definitely in the game, but it's also serving as the transition between rounds. And so students don't know they are being assessed. They think it's part of the game, which it is, right? Because your assessment is embedded in that teaching. The other thing that I'm thinking as you are saying this is just how many doors this opens up, because you can do the same exact activity with bee, bumblebee. And in between rounds of the game, someone is coming up and they are rearranging the 1 and 2 sounds on the beat. It's the same thing as high, middle, low. It's just sounds on a beat with a different game for a different purpose.
Yeah, absolutely. And the same thing, you have your seating chart, that you always have on your clipboard right next to your lesson plan, like we talked about last time. And you're keeping track of turns if anybody asks what you're doing, which is literally what you're doing. You just happen to be maybe assigning kind of a Likert scale or whatever it might be. And, we can talk about what that would look like. That's probably maybe a larger conversation than what we want to get into, but kind of like the 1 to 4, like 1 being non-responsive, 2 being like needs some support or some help, 3 is mostly independent, and then 4 is like they just knock it out of the park, right? So kind of that type of that Likert scale again that we're all used to using. And a way to tailor this for post-literacy is to just replace it with so, me, and do, right? So you can do the same type of thing. So something that I like to do is I use the book 10 in the Bed and then roll over, so, me, do. And after my students learn so, me, do, when we sing the book, they sing roll over, so, me, do, and show with the hand signs. So you could do the same thing. Say, take those 3 notes, roll over, and you can go roll over, and then find a friend, put it on a glockenspiel. There's limitless opportunities here for ways to extend it and have them play and show different ways that they understand this context.
Great. Yeah, and what you said about understanding context, that's one of the things that we can look for to see, do students really understand, is when you change the context, when they have to transfer that understanding. Because everyone in that 2nd grade class, in that 1st grade class, wherever you're doing do, can sing roll over, right? But if you have it inside your head as high, middle, low, and then Mrs. Ann asks you to change the order, that really stretches you. That really stretches your ear. So Ann, have you had situations where students are just not able to move from the way they hear it inside their heads to being able to manipulate those high, middle, low pitches? And what would you do about that?
Yeah, I think that the key there is to give them the vocabulary, right? So like for instance, maybe the first time it's just so, me, do, me, so, and it's a lot of opportunities for you to echo. Maybe the first time, if this is tricky for your students, they've never been asked to do something like this, when it's their turn to transition, like in the mousey game, ask them if they want number 1, 2, or 3, and then be my echo. Me, so, do, right? So you give them that little scaffold so they can hear it first, and then they can read and show on their bodies, right? So any opportunity we have to add in that little assist, like go ahead and do it for sure. And then you'll see more independence the more often that you do this type of work.
Oh, for sure. For sure. Yeah. And then the other thing that I love about how you embedded it is that there was the kinesthetic element. And that is so helpful for kids to have somewhere physically where high is going to live. And that lets them self-check their work, right? So if I'm calling this middle, then I have a physical check where I can hear and I can feel that this is not middle, this is high. It helps students have something to ground it. And I think I'm glad that you're doing this with melodic work because I think that that is a little bit hairier than rhythmic work. The other thing that I want to add to that is same thing with the improvisation at the warm up or in the warm up routine, or with mouse mousey, high, middle, low, moving things around. If you do this and you feel like an absolute failure because no one was able to move those pitches around, or everyone was using their speaking voice about breakfast or their favorite video game or whatever it was, assessments are just information. And so no one has failed. No one has failed. You have not failed as a teacher. Your students have not failed at being 6 years old in a classroom, right? Assessment is information. This just tells us what to do next. And goodness gracious, what would happen if they left our programs and we had no way of knowing that they did not yet have the skills to independently, move some of these elements around and really take ownership of it.
Yeah, so let's take that one step further. And like you said, so say exactly what you just mentioned before. Say that I was playing Mouse Mousey and I had two students have their turn to do the transition and it just flopped and they couldn't do it. That would tell me, oh, we're not ready for this. What can I do in that moment to change it? So maybe it goes from individual students choosing one that they're going to sing or choosing to manipulate on their own. And maybe just me as a teacher takes those 3 magnets on the board, high, middle, low, and I'm constantly changing them. And I'm just having the whole class echo me in between turns. So they just have more of that experience, more of that context building in order to be successful, right? So it's not saying like, oh, like you said, like, oh, I'm a failure. Oh, my kids can't do this. It's like, no, they just can't do it yet, right? They need those extra steps to help them get there and be successful. Yeah,
Great.
Cool.
Yeah, love it. Sweet. Okay, wrapping it up. Assessment is something that we're always doing, but when we think about it with intention, we can find some ways to kind of purposefully draw out information from students, but still keep it playful, still keep it active, still keep it so that students are doing the work and not the teacher doing all of the work on behalf of the students.
Yep, absolutely. It's all about observational data and just kind of taking that moving picture of what's happening in your classroom so that you can show that progress over time and figure out, like you said, what to do next.
Love it.